Well, the Prime Minister appears under pressure to step up Australia's climate action as a landmark UN report urges the world to do more. Leading climate scientists say time is running out to limit the impacts of global warming. Joining me now live is Bridget McKenzie. She is the Minister for Emergency Management and National Recovery and Resilience. Minister, thanks so much for your time. What is the Prime Minister's plan and do the Nationals support it?
Well, Laura, that's a really good question. I guess we saw the IPCC bring down their report into the science of climate change, and bearing in mind this is the first of 3 different reports. The next one will be dealing with adaptation and impacts, and the final report will actually be looking at mitigation, which is the how we deal with mitigating, obviously, climate change. Now, we've been calling as the second party of government for a plan of how we're going to get to net zero by 2050 because, let's face it, the only party that had a plan, policy to do that at the last election was the Labor Party, and they lost. And so we want to actually understand the impact of moving our country to that position. Let's face it, we've done an amazing job as a country. I'm really quite sick of it, Laura, those outside critiquing what our country, what Australians and what our federal government has done in lowering emissions. If you look at the data from 2005 to 2019, Australia has lowered our emissions more than Canada, the US, New Zealand and Japan. I mean, on any measure, that's a fantastic outcome. So on the international stage, a lot of people bring a big game, talk a big talk, but we are a country that are men and women of our word. And so when we say we're going to meet a target, we do. And I think we need to have confidence in that the heavy lifting we've done as Australians in adopting renewables, in changing practices in farming, etc., has actually led to a lowering of emissions that we can actually be proud of instead of beating ourselves up.
Well, the Prime Minister says there is a plan. It's technology, not taxes. So you're saying there's no detail on how that will actually be achieved?
Well, obviously the National Party supports a low-tax approach to any policy initiative. I guess for us, and we've been quite clear of this over many, many months, that we want to see the detail of that. The modelling I've seen of a net zero by 2050 target, the impacts on the agriculture, manufacturing and mining industry would see a loss of over 650,000 jobs. Now, they are jobs in rural and regional Australia, and every single National Party MP and Senator has been sent to Canberra to make sure that policies don't negatively impact disproportionately on our people. And that is all we are asking, is to show us the detail so that we can be convinced and encouraged that it won't be our people and our large industries that will be paying the price of a net zero by 2050 target. And that's fair enough. That's actually the responsible thing for us to do as National Party MPs and Senators.
So you're worried about net zero by 2050. I mean, would you happily agree to that if you could get the guarantees on the other concerns that you've just expressed?
Look, we've all, David Littleproud, myself as Senate Leader, Barnaby Joyce, the National Party room more broadly, has been very clear. We won't be signing a blank cheque. We won't be giving carte blanche authority to sign us up, our people and our communities and industries, to a plan that potentially would have very, very severe long-term impacts. I think, Laura, what the IPCC report handed down recently shows is that this is a global problem, and then without global action, we won't actually solve it. And so when you look at China's emissions, larger than the entire OECD nations combined, when you look at the developing world being 2/3 of global emissions. If you're wanting to actually get bang for your buck, it's not by destroying the Australian beef industry or shutting down our thermal coal industry. It's actually by assisting developing countries lower their emissions whilst increasing prosperity, and also asking China and India to do a little bit more of the heavy lifting in this regard.
Well, on that, I mean, are you saying that there's no way you'd commit to this 2050 target because I hate to break it to some of your colleagues that might not think this, but there's a couple of elections between now and 2050, and the coalition government might not always be in power. So you worried that if you sign up to that target, you can't actually control how it's met?
Well, absolutely, Laura. That is the way it goes. And unfortunately, from the Greens and from the Labor Party, they have no regard for our wealth-producing industries that underpin not just our local economies out in rural and regional Australia, but the national economy, and they are agriculture, mining and manufacturing. So I think we're not going to sign up to something until we know the impact. That's actually the responsible thing for us to do as ministers and as the second party of government. Now, we need to understand the role that we can play positively in lowering emissions, obviously. But it's not up to us to come up with the plan. It's actually for the plan to be developed using the best science and evidence, and so that we can confidently sign up to something that we know shares the cost equally. There's a lot of people out there that think signing up to something like this will have no cost. Well, the reality is someone will have to pay it. And in the National Party, we want to make sure it won't be our people and our industries.